And we're here.
Hello!
Hello! A little early for a Festivus, but...
It is. Hello, all. Welcome. It is Generational Change, Monday night. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And, yeah, the climate crisis is real. For those of you who don't, for those of you who don't know.
And if you're in South Florida, get your scuba certification, people. I'm telling you. Get your scuba certification.
You know, it only takes rain to fall on North Miami, where Jen is from, for about, I don't know, 30 minutes.
It's bad.
And it's flooding. Flooding. Not even just like, oh, there's a little bit of water. No, it's flooding.
Flooding. There's parts of Miami that really are really bad, like underwater.
And so when we think about the climate crisis in the United States, you think about Florida, because we are right in it. Literally.
We're in it.
Sea level rise is a direct correlation to the melting of the polar ice caps. That is a fact. And so now, because it is becoming so devastating, are we going to take the initiative to really slow down the carbon footprint that is emitted on this planet day in and day out? I don't know. But did have the opportunity to see a documentary, which is a follow-up to, is it Knock Down the House or Knocking Down the House?
I don't know.
Is it?
I forget. Now it's been a couple of years.
Knocking
All
Down
right.
the House.
It's the movie. It was the movie about AOC and Corey. And it was what, Amy Vilela and
it is Knock
Paula
Down
Jean.
the House. So I should trust my instincts when I say it first time.
It was Amy, Paula Jean, Corey, and AOC. Yeah,
that is correct.
Yeah,
that is correct. And the good news is that so Amy, Corey. So 2 of the 4 are in Congress right now, which is good. But we definitely need Double K. We love you. Thanks for always having our back as we have yours. And of course, we do believe that everything obviously starts and ends with the labor movement, which we'll have a lot to talk about here. But of course, the follow-up to this conversation regarding Knock Down the House is what ultimately led AOC into Congress. Cori Bush followed behind her. And of course, the climate crisis is without question, you know, it is the monumental issue of our time. I know a lot of people do not actually want to believe that, but we're seeing it every day here. And I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that truth. So the follow-up to that movie, to that documentary, is To the End, which talks about the climate crisis and what it actually takes to fight for it on Capitol Hill. As we have said many times before, the impact that we're going to have, the last place it's going to happen is on the Hill. It's going to happen at home, and it's going to happen with cultivating this power infrastructure that is needed through labor, because there is and we'll talk about this with Rachel, there is a great part of the documentary which she basically identifies what it's like running through the maze that is Washington, D.C. It isn't necessarily that it's said, it's just kind of understood that this is how it is, and if you get in the way, we will squash you and get you out of town. And that's more or less how it's been. So we need to keep building that infrastructure. So without further ado, we are very pleased to welcome the filmmaker who made Knock Down the House and To the End. Rachel Lears, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to meet you guys.
It's nice to meet you too. Thank you for coming on. I'm just going to change this.
Yes,
now
please do, because I don't even realize that
I know. I told you we have to do this.
Beautiful.
You like that one? Okay.
Yes, that's
okay. It's just distracting. Okay.
Oh, it's like a rainbow.
Whatever. It's better.
Aesthetically pleasing. So, Rachel, how did you get started, obviously, as a filmmaker? How did Knock Down the House come about? And then, obviously, how did it lead to the End, which has just been released?
Yeah. I started making films when I was in my mid-20s, which is a bit later than a lot of people start. I found it through a graduate program that I was in. I was studying anthropology and ethnomusicology, and I found this program at NYU where I was that was doing a combination of history, theory, and production of documentary, and I just fell in love with the art form. This was a while ago now, almost 20 years ago. So it was before digital video was just everywhere, but it was right when that was starting to become more accessible. And I had a background in photography and music and was really interested in politics and languages and people. And I just felt like this art form is going to allow me to just explore everything I care about all at once. So it took me a while to sort of do that career change out of academia and be working on film full time. But actually, right around the same time I finished my dissertation in anthropology, Occupy Wall Street started here in New York City. So I just dove into that, and I became part of the media group and the immigrant worker justice group. And out of that, I had been making films for a while at that point as part of my graduate program. And, in addition to that, and I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I wasn't doing it full time. But I really was awakened to social movements and the labor movement, which, as you were just noting. So I became involved through the immigrant worker justice group in making a film about a group of undocumented immigrant workers who formed an independent union at a bakery on the Upper East Side in Manhattan and occupied their store with Occupy Wall Street activists and won this historic contract in 2012. And that really set me on the road of making films about social justice, character-based films about incredible people who are transforming their own lives and their communities and just, achieving historic things by engaging in collective action. So Knock Down the House, I started working on it the day after the 2016 presidential election. I had an 8-month-old baby at the time and was thinking about taking a break from political filmmaking, but then with the results of the election, I felt like, you know what, I have this skill set. Maybe I should keep doing this. So I'd heard about the brand new Congress Justice Democrats project of recruiting extraordinary, ordinary people to run for Congress. And I contacted them, and through speaking with those organizers, ended up on that road, which was several years in the making. And then, of course, that came out in 2019. And that project, Knock Down the House, really overlapped with To the End as well. So as we were in post-production for Knock Down the House in the fall of 2018, that was the same time that the UN IPCC report came out, which you might remember. It was like such a big one where they said
it was 12 years, right?
That's what that was, the 12 years report. By 2030, we've got to make all these rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society, right? So that was when Sunrise Movement occupied Nancy Pelosi's office with AOC. Green New Deal launches into public consciousness. We were already in conversation with Ocasio-Cortez and her team about doing a follow-up project that had something to do with the climate crisis. And very quickly, it sort of coalesced around the Green New Deal and these 4 key players behind the Green New Deal. So Varshini Prakash of Sunrise Movement, Alexandra Rojas of Justice Democrats, who I'd also known for several years at that point because she'd been behind the scenes with Knock Down the House, and Rihanna Gunn Wright, who's one of the policy architects of the Green New Deal. So yes, as you noted, it explores the maze of Washington, D.C. What's it like when a movement gets a few feet in the doors of the halls of power? And it's pretty complicated, but they actually found their way out the other end of the maze, and through a combination of inside and outside organizing and pressure, managed to really shift the window so that we do have climate policy for the first time in U.S. history. It's not enough, has some problems, but it's a big step, and due in no small part to the work of these incredible women that we follow.
I so appreciate what you're doing. And this is something that you just said really made me have this thought. Like, we've always been big proponents that there has to be an inside and an outside strategy that has to be working simultaneously. One of the biggest impediments are when the people on the inside criticize the people on the outside, and vice versa. And I don't mean legitimate criticism, but I mean getting in each other's way and not realizing that everybody has something they can bring to the table. It might not be the exact way you would do it, right? And what you're doing is you're in both worlds. You're actually you're taking the people from the movement and bringing that into the political sphere, which is really cool. It's like you're combining those two things. It's like I don't even know. It's like a
cross-pollination.
It's cross-pollination, but it's really cool because what you're doing is bringing those two things together, and it really needs that because there's so many people on the outside are so resentful and angry on the people on the inside, and some of it is valid. A certain amount of it is very valid, but they're also extremely ignorant as to how things work. And it's very easy to be like a Monday morning quarterback in a lot of cases. I mean, I think that some of the criticism is valid and some of it is just unproductive, right? And what you're doing is sort of getting over some of that. And I really appreciate that very much.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons for ordinary people to feel very disillusioned or even cynical about our political system. But at the same time, it is what we've got right now. And, you know, even around the question of voting, which, you know, the film is really about so much more than voting. It's about getting involved at so many different levels and movements. But sometimes I have this, people are asking about, you know, does it even make a difference? You know, does my vote even count? And it absolutely does. Like, you can vote strategically and also organize for the things you really, really believe in. At a higher level, even if the person you're voting for isn't perfect. But the thing that is really exciting about the projects we've been working on is seeing when there is actual, like, really strong alignment between the movements on the outside and the people on the inside. So they're working in a very coordinated way. So that's what we always set out to explore in this film. And you've got, of course, the Sunrise Movement, you know, putting pressure from the outside through direct action and a variety of different tactics. You've got Ocasio-Cortez and the Squad working on the inside through this strategy within the Progressive Caucus. You know, not to get too wonky about it, but they're trying to push the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which itself is, you know, bigger than them, but they're trying to push that to take a further stands to do, you know, to push for certain things in the political deal making with respect to the rest of the House and the party leadership and the president and the Senate and all of those, you know, those big players. So the CPC actually played a huge role in the past couple of years with that, which, you know, because the Justice Democrats are able to you know, elect this group of people that's really strong, they don't take any corporate funding, and they are really strong on a lot of these issues. They can push the CPC to take those stronger stands a lot of times. So then, you know, we're following also, we've got, you know, so I look at it as like Sunrise is outside, AOC is inside.
Yeah.
Rihanna Gunn Wright is trying to get the ideas from the outside into the inside. And Justice Dems is trying to get the people from the outside to the inside. And I just saw a message from Zaina Day. Hey, Zaina.
We're speaking with Rachel Lears, filmmaker, director of Knock Down the House, and recently To the End. You know, one of, I mean, I really like your friend Alexandra Rojas. And one of the things in particular I liked was the fact that she was able to sit through a CNN interview, very similar to our friend Nina Turner, sit next to Hillary Rosen and allow her to basically cut her up at the knees and just be like, just take it, just let it be. You're trying to convince this particular audience that is very comfortable in their livelihoods that our side is actually right and theirs is wrong. And so reacting to that type of, you know, basically like told her that she was immature and childish. And it's like, you know, it's typical Hillary Rosen, Anita Dunn, that entire group that basically are subservient to the corporate power of the Democratic Party. And so the fact that she was able to handle that the way that she was, I think really says a lot. And there is something to be said for recognizing that a lot of the early stages of the movement have to involve being willing to just take a whole bunch of body blows from people that are going to do everything in their power to stop this change from happening. Like you pointed out in the documentary, ExxonMobil will spend hundreds of millions of dollars on TV advertising alone to convince you that what they're doing is actually helping the environment and not killing it.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I just have to point out about that clip where Alexandra Rojas is on CNN. It was one of her first appearances on CNN. The anchor actually introduces her as from junior Democrats. She actually says junior Democrats.
Don't think for a second that wasn't done deliberately.
Oh my God. It's just one of those little details that I don't think everyone catches. But yeah, it's so belittling. And yeah, I mean, we really wanted to show as well and really explore directly the role of the media in preventing, preventing the climate action that the scientists say is necessary and that we know we need to address this crisis. And, not just on climate, it's all of these issues that are interconnected, all of the crises of, our economic inequality, racial inequality, just everything. The power structures that stand in the way of progress include the mainstream media. And so, you can really see that in the film through Rojas's experiences with CNN. And we also try to show it through, various archival montages. But I think it's really about shifting the horizon of possibility, right? So when the media is, they don't cover climate enough. That is a huge problem in and of itself. And when they do, they don't make the connections between climate disasters, the politics that they're only covering in terms of horse races, and they're not covering the stakes of it. They rarely cover the activism. They never talk about theories of change. They never talk about, what are some ways that things have actually changed in big ways in the future? What are some ways that they could be changing now? What are the things that people have to do to get involved to change things? Like those are just not topics that are covered, So I think it's understandable. That's a huge part of the reason why people do feel disillusioned and feel like their voice doesn't make a difference and that there isn't any way that anything can change. So that makes it all the more important. I mean, for us, it's a big part of why we make documentaries, independent documentaries, long form documentaries that you can really get into an issue over a period of time, really get into it with details and nuance that you can't get to in in the 24-hour news cycle or on social media. So that's one of the things that we really feel like documentaries can contribute to this media ecosystem.
Speaking with Rachel Lears, director of To the End, I can tell you definitely had a lot of B-roll footage at one of the key points of the documentary, which is with, I don't want to say her name wrong, Rihanna Gunn Wright, when she initially was doing that, I guess what you would call sort of a powwow with all different elements of the climate movement, and hearing a whole bunch of different opinions, regarding what is it going to take in order for us to really come to the middle. We believe that the key to the success of the climate movement is the success of the labor movement. Bringing that to the forefront is how we are going to be able to do that. If anyone thinks that the only way we're going to do this is by having these divided coalitions that's going to focus on this element and that element, we believe labor is the great equalizer. It's how you bring the most amount of people together. And case in point, you have a lot of people in, let's say, we recently spoke with one of the leaders of the Teamsters Union down here, and they believe in a lot of the things that we're fighting for, and they have just as many Bernie supporters as they do Trump supporters. Yep. And having that intersectionality on that front, I think, is how we're going to get past the corporate power infrastructure that is the fossil fuel industry, anything you could think of. That's where we stand. How do you see it?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think, as I mentioned, like it was really transformational for me in my political education and development to work with the labor movement. And even though my films have not focused on that per se for the last couple of years, I think everyone we're working with is very much on board with that, the central importance of labor in these conversations. And, as Paula Jean Swearingen used to always say when we were making Knock Down the House, and I know she would continue to say it, that it's a completely false choice. The idea that you have to choose between jobs and the environment is a completely false choice that is being sold to people. Of course, everyone deserves clean, safe, good jobs, as well as a clean, safe, good environment to live in. And they're, that is just should be basic human rights. So yeah, I agree completely. And I think that it's been really interesting to watch. It's, with a film like this, it covers a lot of ground, and there's a lot of things that we didn't have the space to get into. So there's a lot of things that happened on the ground that, that don't end up being in that don't end up in the film, or that we're just not able to get into with total depth. But a lot of the folks in that room, in that scene that you're talking about, there are labor voices in that room. There are union representatives in that room. Where that work ended up going, that Rihanna Gunn-Wright was involved in, was towards the formation of the Green New Deal Network, which is a coalition that includes at least the SEIU. I am not sure which other unions are part of it, but it's very much, the goal of it is to include labor at that table as well. When you see Alexandra Rojas campaigning for Justice Democrats candidate Jessica Cisneros in Texas, the AFL-CIO of Texas was behind that campaign, as well as other JD candidates in Texas, because I spoke to someone on the ground, and she was saying, we know this transition is coming. We want to have a seat at the table, right? So the whole vision of the Green New Deal has always been centrally about jobs and justice. And it's about good union jobs, not just, it's about turning, it's about just transition for fossil fuel workers. It's about unionizing green jobs that already exist in sectors like care, which we don't always talk about as green jobs, but they absolutely are. So I think it's just a very important piece of the equation, both when we think about what the transition away from fossil fuels should look like. Of course, unions have to be part of that table, but I also think that labor and the labor movement is just part of any political and economic and socioeconomic change that we want to see. It just has to be that type of organizing is a huge part of how ordinary people can, achieve collective power, and that translates, into wins at the level of the workplace, but it can also translate into building power for policy as well.
Yeah, I think also one of the problems, and I've always thought this, it's branding and marketing, and I feel the same about when we talk about the Green Party as I do about the Green New Deal. I think that the way it was sold and branded, and I think a lot of it was very intentional, that it was almost set up for not being able to necessarily succeed. Like, it's just wrong to go with that branding. It turns off so many people. The concept of it is good. When we say things like clean energy grid, we say things like job guarantee, we say those types of things, they're much more, I think, populist sounding in nature. And when you say something like Green New Deal, it turns off people. And I don't know exactly why. There's an affiliation with that to me where it's like, oh, they're just a bunch of left-wing hippies talking out tree hugging and all that.
It's much easier to cut it down, because when you have a slogan, it's easy for corporate media to dive right into it and say, oh, this is just pie in the sky. It's going to cost, it's totally going to cost $100 trillion. You people are crazy.
This was something else I want to say, is that the reason that that's happening is the same people, the overlords that own the fossil fuel industry and own the military industrial complex, they also run our media. So we're only going to get a certain amount of information that is going to be accurate from anything that's mainstream regarding this. That's what I mean. They're in bed with fossil fuel industry. Why would they want to be promoting a clean energy grid?
Right. They're not going to promote anything. Even I think they're afraid of being seen to promote anything that would involve change.
Right.
And therefore they're promoting the status quo, which is, of course, a very strong ideological position in and of itself. But I actually think the main thing that happened with the phrase Green New Deal, tracing it, was that the right wing really pounced on it and turned it into a meme on the right. It was actually polling really well before that happened. So when that happened, that kind of turned a lot of people have negative associations with it through that. I think the intent was, of course, to reference the original New Deal, which is obviously a populist project in American history, and to correct the shortcomings of the original New Deal, which mostly benefited white men.
Yeah.
So in any case, whatever you call it, the
Exactly.
ideas are the same, which is that we need to do this decarbonization. We need to do it fast, and we need to do it in a way that creates good union jobs and creates a more just society in the process, because that's going to be a more stable society that can deal with the climate disasters that are already baked in and coming down the pike.
Rachel, we have a very, what I would consider an intersectional crowd that follow our channel. And
can I just correct Metalopoly? It's not cow farts, it's cow burps. Sorry, continue.
Okay. Well, anyway, one thing that we've noticed that a lot of conservatives, especially libertarian conservatives, do agree with is we should reduce our carbon footprint, but they are very gung-ho on nuclear. Now, I know there's a lot of people who have difference of opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, nuclear does not have a carbon footprint. And if that's what's going to get us off of coal and natural gas, and it's the fastest way to convince people in states like Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, that fracking has to go by the wayside and that we really have to find another path forward. How do you see, if at all, nuclear playing a role? Because I do think that this is a key issue that can really unite a lot of people. Granted, we saw what happened with fusion the other day, but we're not, we're clearly not there yet.
We're not there yet. No, I think those headlines were a little overblown. But I clicked on it. I was like, really? Not quite yet. But anyway, yeah, I see my goal and our goal with the film was less about getting into the nitty-gritty details of which technology or which specific approach, but we're more interested in the scale of we wanted to really push forward the idea that we need policy, not just individual action. We need massive government policy. It has to be on the scale of the crisis, and it has to be intersectional with jobs and justice. So that was sort of our main point. We don't get into questions of particular energy sources in the film. That said, I will say my personal stance is that is no new nuclear, that we shouldn't be dismantling the plants that exist right now if they are operating soundly. But from what I have read, the cost of wind and solar has gone down so much in the last few years that it's now actually more expensive and takes longer to build new nuclear than it does to build new wind and solar. And therefore, that doesn't actually make economic sense. Whereas, 5 or 10 years ago, maybe it did. With the way things were at that time, but that at the moment, that's not how it's seen. And then I think also it's very important to remember from an environmental justice perspective, any technology that creates hazardous waste is going to be poisoning somebody. And the question is, who's it going to be poisoning? And usually it's low income and BIPOC communities that are going to be dealing with that, whether it's nuclear or fossil fuels. So that's why, nuclear is not, it's clean in terms of carbon, but it's not a clean energy source in the sense that it does produce hazardous waste.
Right.
So, reasonable people can disagree about the details. And I, do not claim to be a scientist or an economist on this level, but that's my opinion from what I've read most recently.
I think that's fair. Series 4 nuclear is supposed to be able to replenish nuclear waste. Again, that's one person's vested interest in that industry. That, again, that would obviously need to be proven. I think the bottom line is we need to just continue to build out what we're doing as of right now, which is clearly this intersectional labor movement, and it can be led in the energy field because, again, whether it is solar, whether it is wind, whether it is geothermal, whether it is hydro, whether it's hemp, there is a lot of different energy sources that are out there that people that Alex works with on the Hill, that Corey works with on the Hill, they are paid an ungodly amount of money to tell you that the way it is now is never going to change, and it has to stay this way. Well, when somebody's paying you $250,000 a year, it's very easy to look the other direction. And people think that while that may not seem like an astronomical amount of money. Well, if you're making $50,000 a year, whatever job you have, and you can, times it by 5, we'll see how you feel about it. And that to me is really that is the ultimate issue here. And that is the ultimate issue for anybody who chooses, whether it is Jessica Cisneros, whether it was Jen against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, whether it's anybody who is running for federal office, who is running against representatives of either party that are completely bought and paid for by corporate special interests. They will
specifically fossil fuel industry and the military industrial complex.
Yeah. And they will go to no length. There is no length that they will not go to in order to prevent this, as you suggested, as we've suggested, this generational change that is coming. It's just a question of when it's going to happen. Are there any projects that you're working on right now, potentially for the future, that you want to let the audience know about? And I think very importantly, are there independent media channels that are actively trying to have you on to promote your film? Because according to some people in our chat and on social media, it seems that Fox News was the only one who even mentioned that you had this documentary coming out, which gives me a lot of concern, because this is a serious issue and this is a very good documentary and people should be watching it as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's weird. We did have a bit of a troll thing going on, and had more high profile negative press than sympathetic. Of course, we have gotten plenty of sympathetic press as well, but I would love to be speaking with more independent media as well as the film rolls out across platforms. It's no longer in theaters, but it's going to be on the TVOD platforms, iTunes, Amazon, that type of thing, for rent and purchase. In I believe within the next month or so, and then it'll be rolling out across streaming as well. So it's available for community screenings in January and educational screenings. If anybody wants to do that type of thing with their community, you can find us on our website, totheendfilm.com. So we are putting together an impact campaign for this film, as we do for all our films. And I do not currently have another film project in the works, because I am working on the impact campaign, and it's just, it's a lot to get a film out and into the world. And we've got some amazing people working on that campaign, which is really about strategically making sure the film gets to the right people, doing the grassroots outreach, building out a social media strategy, making sure that it's getting to movement organizations. We've talked to some unions that want to use it in their political education with their membership. So there's just a lot of different things that can happen that we need to take some legwork to make sure that happens. But yeah, the media has been interesting.
Yeah, shocking. It's shocking. Not really. No.
Yeah. So we certainly are glad to be speaking with you all and your listeners. And just because you're hearing about it here first, check it out. You can watch our trailer. It's out there.
And if we had the updated website that I wanted, we would be able to put this. We would be done with this, and we would put the link on the website and all of that. But we need to update our website. That's sort of me nagging.
I tried the best I could. I got the word out there. We're small but mighty. But we're small but mighty. That's what
I hear that. Small but mighty. Words.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you and what you're doing very much.
I appreciate what you all are doing too. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, Rachel. Happy holidays, and thank you.
Sounds great. Same to you as well. Take care.
Bye.
Obviously, this movie was very good. I like the way that Rachel films in particular. I think that I've always been a documentary film guy. That's the style that I prefer, especially when she was able to go into the halls of Congress and really show what it's like being in these offices. And again, one of the key things that Rachel is able to show in this documentary that I think a lot of you who are constantly bashing Alex and other people who are on the Hill, there are corporate lobbyists at every turn, on every street surrounding the U.S. Capitol.
It's an infestation.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
It's like an
when you see somebody walking on the street in a suit, chances are They're working for some lobbying firm. And let me assure you, the lobbying firm they're working for is not working on your behalf. There's a very small percentage of people that are lobbying Capitol Hill that are doing it for the right reasons. There are people that are lobbying for higher CEO pay, less regulations on Wall Street, yet less regulations in Silicon Valley.
I realize this is what I actually went. That's why I went to law school, was to be a lobbyist.
Yeah.
But I always went to do it for nonprofit. Like I always went to law school to lobby for things. Like I always wanted to work for like the Innocence Project.
I'm sure Rachel has seen this, and I would advise everybody to see this old classic Simpsons episode of Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington.
Why?
It is one of
always
the
come down to the Simpsons,
because there's a great line in the episode where the corporate lobbyist goes to the corrupt politician and says, "We would like to drill for oil in Teddy Roosevelt's head," and he's like, "I don't know. I think people will notice this." He opens up the suitcase with $1 million, and he says, "Teddy who?" I mean, but in a way that kind of crystallizes exactly what goes on. And
are you talking about the 6 grandfathers? The mountain that you refer to as Mount Rushmore? Is that what
that's the thing I'm referring to.
Okay. That's called the 6 grandfathers.
But who better to bring on next onto our wonderful show than somebody who actually ran for Congress in our nation's capital and is now going to be a commissioner in maybe the most underserved part of Washington, D.C.
And I always found the dichotomy and juxtaposition in that area just stifling.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's like the center of our governance, and yet the poverty and the need is so great. Like you couldn't put those two things any closer together.
Step outside of Foggy Bottom, step outside of Georgetown, and walk into Ward 7 or Ward 8 of Washington, D.C.
Well, most people that aren't from there wouldn't go there.
That's true, but that's where real Washingtonians actually live that have been there for generations and have been completely underserved for a very long time. But the good news is that I think they may actually be getting somebody who will actually be serving their community for the first time in a long time. Reverend Wendy Hamilton, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Hi, it's good to see you.
Good to see you all as well. And I know you almost called me Wendy Williams, and I'm going to let that slide.
I bit the tongue, didn't let it happen.
It just rolls off like that, you know.
It's okay. How you doing? No, I'm kidding. I get that often, so it's fine. It's fine. But Reverend Wendy Hampton, that's me.
Season's greetings, Reverend, and congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. So one of the things about, people that don't realize that when you're the representative from DC, you don't have a say-so. Right. You don't really have a say-so. So when you were running for that, and granted, I'm not necessarily a fan of the person sitting there, as we got like totally ghosted because of, we don't need to talk about thou shall not be named. But the position that you're in now, to me, is seemingly so much more capable of doing so much more for people than you actually could have done in Congress.
Right. Hence my motivation for running for this particular role, right?
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, yes, I was running for the federal office against a 32-year incumbent.
Yes.
And so, I say that to say we knew it was a long shot, if you will, but it was one worth taking, because at the end of the day, these folks who are staying in these offices past their date of real good, effective service. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, that's generous.
Yeah, I'm trying to be generous, but not being challenged for whatever reasons is undemocratic. So if not for anything other than to give the residents of DC options on the ballot, I ran. And I knew that there were people who, if they had another choice to vote for, they would opt to vote for that. And they did. And so I'm very proud of the work we did being a first-time candidate for that role in that race. We got nearly 8,000 votes, which is pretty decent for, a first timer running for an office such as that. So I'm very proud of what we did in that congressional race. And so when it ended, I had to take a break because I had been running for like 18 months. I tried to get that early start. So you know what that's like.
I do.
After the race was over, like that next day, I was like, don't call me, don't look for me. I had to just sort of decompress from everything. And I took maybe like a couple of weeks off just, to kind of get my groundings, my bearings back. But what I recognized is that the energy to serve and the issues that I was trying to address still remain. And so what I, started thinking about was, how can I redirect this energy. Like, what can I do? Because oftentimes I'll see, we'll all see someone run for office, and then if they don't win, they disappear. And I'm like, well, where'd you go? The issues that we were running for that you cared about still exist. And I'm not saying you have to be in elected office to do them, but it certainly does make it, a lot more feasible in many ways and in many settings to be able to do that. So this commissioner position became available in my neighborhood in the Great Ward 8 that you all talked about earlier. And I decided I was going to run for that, which some people were saying, wow, you're going to run again for something, so quickly, because that race was coming up. These are nonpartisan positions that are only run in the general. So I came right out of the primary, took a couple weeks off. Then I had to, gear up to run because the general was coming up in November. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it took me a year. To feel it actually took me longer after the election to feel normal than it did after giving birth to feel normal.
Yeah, I can feel bad.
Well, different, of course, is obviously running in an urban district versus a suburban district, where you constantly have to be running all over the place. Thankfully, it's a limited amount of space that one really has to canvass and cover. I mean, granted, it's still a lot of work, 100%. Right. How much of an impact would you say your congressional run made in your ability to win the commissioner race?
Well, I think certainly from a name recognition standpoint, it did give me some familiarity with folks. So instead of starting at 0, perhaps, if you will, and maybe not 0, maybe I'll say maybe starting at 10, I was able to start at the 50. Let's put it that way. So people were aware of who I was. And as I was out there, greeting people, more people were like, not, who's that chick? Like, oh, I saw your sign, or I remember you. Oh, or that's great. So I do think that helped, specifically because I'm not sure if you all are aware, but my race went down to the wire. When you talk about the importance of democracy and every vote counting, even though it's a small district, it came down to 6 votes. I won by 6 votes.
And to those who say that it doesn't make a difference, just remember Bernie Sanders won his first race by 10 votes.
Yes.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. No, it definitely matters. I think there's no way to say that it doesn't help that you have a previous run. It always helps because there's a momentum, there's a familiarity, you have experience with a campaign, and now you're talking about a smaller amount of constituents. Right. It's infinitely more manageable to downsize the size of a campaign. Like I think about the idea of people who run statewide races, and I've always said I'm never doing that. That's just I'm not running unless I lived in a place that was like Rhode Island or something really small. I'm not running that. And so you downsized who you needed to reach. So I would think that is somewhat of an advantage in terms of the amount of voters you're needing to coalesce at this point.
Absolutely. And from the congressional standpoint, having to run statewide, even though, as you mentioned, we're not a state yet, but running statewide means running in all 8 wards of the city. But I specifically, represented and spent time in Ward 8 because of the disadvantage and because this is my home ward. So I was building out those relationships citywide that I was able to also cultivate close ones here in Ward 8, so that when it came time actually, to make the decision to run for this commissioner role, I sought out some of those relationships. And I just spoke to some people and said, what would you think about that? And they were like, oh, yeah, well, absolutely. And so it made it a little bit easier. So when I downsized, I was able to identify a couple of people to help volunteer and things like that based on my experience in the congressional run. So
we're speaking with Reverend Wendy Hamilton, Commissioner-Elect of Ward 8 in Washington, D.C. For those of you who do not know, Ward 8 is, along with Ward 7, the 2 most underserved districts in the entire city.
It's like District 12 in the Hunger Games.
It's very much a place that is the easiest way to describe it is the haves, which is places like Foggy Bottom and Georgetown, and the have-nots, which is Ward 7 and Ward 8 in particular, which is at the east end of the city. Why it's been decades, multiple generations, that very little has changed in Ward 8. Why is that the case? And what are you hoping to accomplish as the next commissioner of this area?
Well, one of the things I hope to accomplish, I want to answer your second one first, is just to use my voice and those connections that I've made, those relationships that I have built to bring more attention, and more conversation to the table about the needs of Ward 8 and specifically my single member district, which is Bellevue, which covers the easternmost part of the east of the river. We're nearly in like Maryland. We're so close to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you're familiar
you can pretty much hit FedEx Field from where you are.
Right. Yeah. So I'm very close to there. And what my experience has been, I've lived here in DC for over 20 years in different wards, but I've lived here in Ward 8 now for going on 8 years. And just the level of services, just the response times, the idea and the notion somehow that we are considered last after all budgeting decisions are made, after all funds have been disseminated, it then becomes, oh, well, here's the leftovers and see what you can do with them. And I just feel like that's an injustice. I feel like that's immoral in many ways. And like you all pointed out, there are folks that have lived here. As I was out canvassing for this particular role, I was talking to residents who have lived in their homes for 54 years.
Wow.
And they are, wondering, why have we been forgotten? What is happening in this city? It is changing before my very eyes. DC was predominantly Black. When I moved here, I came to Howard University as a freshman a whole bunch of years ago. It was called Chocolate City because DC was about 70% Black when I came. And as of the last census, the demographics are now 46.
Wow.
A lot of people aren't aware of that. So that's
like citywide gentrification, like on a mass scale. Like so where have people been migrating to? Where has that population gone?
They have gone primarily, the biggest increase has been what we call Ward 6, the wharf area, the waterfront, which has been built up and redeveloped, and it's, fabulous. It used to just be a string of like seafood restaurants and a couple of nightclubs, and now there's condominiums and there's restaurants, and they're building it up into a sports district. So they put the Nationals baseball stadium over there and the Audi Field soccer stadium over there, and so they have built that up, and that has seen the most explosive growth. And so what they do is also with the census every 10 years, they also redistrict the wards, because the way our home rule is set up here in DC, all wards endeavor to have no more than 90,000 people in them each. And if any one of them grows above the 90,000 within the 10 years, then they look to sort of redistribute and redistrict the wards to make them the population more equitable. So Ward 6 grew, and it kind of got split. So parts of it did get put in Ward 8 this time, and parts of it got put in Ward 7, much to the chagrin of some of the residents, but that's a whole nother conversation. But the majority of Black Washingtonians, native Washingtonians, still reside and remain in Ward 7 and Ward 8, and very much want to preserve that history and that culture of the city, but finding a very difficult, time in doing that with the level of gentrification, with the pace of gentrification, certainly, and with the lack of equitable opportunities being distributed throughout the city.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely glad that someone like you is going to be on that commission. I mean, it's like, on the one hand, you're seeing development, you're seeing all these great things, but they're destroying whatever the history is of those neighborhoods. And it's always very patriarchal. It's like, okay, we're gonna designate this for you. We're gonna give you this for this.
Yes.
Instead of building up by giving control to the people of those areas to build up what they want and what they see fit in their neighborhoods. Right. And that's always, to me, been a huge issue. And that, of course, is why we're having so much gentrification. But it seems to me that it's very intentional. right? Like if you make sort of life unhappy and you make neighborhoods sort of fall apart, then you can go in and scoop them up for a cheap price, gentrify them, and make a lot of real estate money. Like that's to me how I see it. And if they really cared, then the money would go to reinvesting in those communities as they see fit.
You're not suggesting that real estate developers are only looking out for themselves, are you?
I'm suggesting that capitalism in all areas is not working for us. That's what I'm suggesting.
You're sounding as if somehow they're going into some of even our public housing complexes and allowing them to become dilapidated, kind of forcing people to have to find someplace else to go.
Yes.
And then offering that building for sale for $1 to a developer so that they can come in.
Turn them into an Airbnb.
But so
like
it's like,
but
then what happens is that so the people that live there and maybe work there now are not able to live near where they work.
Exactly.
So, right. And so now you're connecting it to an unemployment problem for that person because now where they're maybe having to live, they don't have the means to work anywhere near there.
Right.
It's like it's really a huge problem. And what they need is fighters protecting their neighborhood and the integrity of their neighborhood at all levels.
And for those who do not think that it is not deliberate in terms of city and urban planning, as far as the gentrification factors, the factors that result in people living in poorer areas, particularly in Washington, D.C., I personally think that Washington, D.C. has maybe the best metro system in the whole country. The problem is that the neighborhoods that need it the most are the ones who have the least amount of stops. And they're always the furthest away from where you want to be and where you need to be. Whereas in the wealthy areas, there is a train stop literally within 2 or 3 blocks, almost anywhere you go.
Shocking.
Listen, transportation, food, one of the things that I'm looking forward to, well, let me say this. It's a natural fit for me as a preacher and as a minister to speak up and call out injustice. And I've always looked at public service as a form of ministry. So I am going to speak. I'm going to use my platform, my voice, and all of that to speak up for those who feel like they have no voice. So this was natural for me. And I can be nice and holy, and I can also raise holy hell, because I don't like injustice. It's just a part of my nature to call it out and to hold folks accountable. That's something that I'm looking forward to doing. But one of the things, and for instance, when we're talking about these inequities that exist in Ward 8, remember I mentioned there, 90,000 folks roughly per ward. We have one full service grocery store in Ward 8 for 90,000 residents. One.
How about that, Metopoly? Think about that.
Ward 3, our more affluent ward where American University is and, going up near Chevy, has 16.
16. I was going to say at least a dozen.
16.
Yeah.
Full service grocery store, Wegmans, Safeway. They have a plethora. We have
Whole Foods. Got to have your Whole Foods. I mean, that's important.
Yeah. One. That's unacceptable to me. That's unacceptable. And so, they'll put in a little market. About a year and a half ago, they went and got what I like to call, I called it a boutique bodega in the article that I did, the interview I did, because they got up there and they said, oh, we're opening up this, Good Foods Market. And it's our, finally another full service grocery store for Ward 8. And we've worked so hard for this. They had a whole dog and pony show out in front of the location about what they were doing and bringing to the, to the community and that. And it was not that. It was a whole gaslighting project. Forgive me, but I'm calling out some of our leadership in the city because they just announced a month ago that they're closing. And how did you bring this into the community? It wasn't a good fit. I'm just saying it was not like a full service grocery. It really was like a mini mart, right? Like you could go in, but it had some boutique things, and that's not a good fit for the area and the community that they, wanted to serve. They had $9.99 salads in a mason jar in there. Who's buying that? I mean, if you can afford it or not. And so the owners claiming financial, problems is closed the market, and there's been no outrage. The same folks who danced in front of it as an accomplishment, they can't be found now to come and talk about why this is closing suddenly after a year and a half and what they plan to do to replace it.
Well, food deserts is huge. Like
Yes.
this is a huge problem. And it's never going to get the right attention because the people that need to care cannot make enough profit in those neighborhoods. And since our government refuses to subsidize them accordingly, see, I have no problem with the idea that people should make a profit. I have no problem with that. I think supermarkets should make a profit. But I also think there needs to be obligations, just sort of like we put on developers. Fine, you want to develop, but you got to build this amount of schools. I think it's the same with supermarkets.
Yes.
We need to require them to serve communities, even when it's not for profit,
Yes.
as part of the deal to exist.
That's exactly right.
And I also think we're big proponents of doing community gardens and at schools and doing the most we can to educate, because having the availability is important, but so is being educated on the food and on the different things.
Yes.
And that's also something that's often lacking in those food deserts.
Right.
Like I've spent a lot of time doing this with my friend down here. And it's amazing to me how little we teach our kids about that kind of stuff anywhere, but specifically in those neighborhoods that need it so badly.
And that's what excites me about this role. Like you pointed out earlier, there's so much more tangible work I feel like I'm able to do in this capacity, even more so than the federal role. And that's really what I was looking forward to, because that was my whole goal as a congressional candidate. I was saying, I want to bring tangible solutions to DC residents, because there are some things in that role, even though we don't have statehood, there are some things that I could do in that role that residents could say, this has an impact on my everyday life. Well, now, local is where the magic happens. The local is where you really can put the pedal to the metal. And so that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is being able to use my voice, certainly, but to make tangible changes that change the station of everyday lives of my residents. That's what I set out to do. And that's what I'm looking forward to in this particular role when I get sworn in January.
I just want to ask one question. I just have one question. This is for the fact, this is sort of like, a non sequitur, but what is the position? Like, what is the popular position on DC statehood? Like, I do not claim to totally understand the pros, the cons, the what have you. My tendency would be whatever the majority of people want should be what it is.
The problem with DC statehood is not about having one Democratic congressional representative. It's about guaranteeing 2 Democratic U.S. senators. And that is the biggest issue on Capitol Hill. And in some
is
way,
that what the holdup is?
I would say without question.
Okay, but my question was more like, what is popular opinion on this?
Right. So there's very popular opinion in DC for statehood being granted to us. That is something that, as a tax-paying citizen, paying more taxes than 33 states and not having representation, we feel like that's the bare minimum that we should have. We have more population than Wyoming, more population than Vermont, and yet no representation. Now, the political pushback is, yes, we tend to vote Democratic, and it would give us 2 additional Democratic seats. And so that's why Mitch McConnell, said it was dead on arrival when it got past the House the first time and the Republicans held the Senate. And then this time it got passed and there just wasn't enough. Then Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, could not be counted on to be a vote for it. So they wanted more information, but the majority of the city is, pro-statehood. Now, there is some, and particularly those in my area, that need some more understanding. They don't fully understand what statehood would mean. Like, what are the ramifications? Like, what do we lose out on?
Right.
If we give up at, what we have now. There's programs like the DC Tag, which is a $10,000 scholarship that's made available to DC residents who graduate from high school, and they can use it at any state, any school around the country. Will that go away? So there's definitely an education campaign that, has to go along with this. But the prevailing notion and idea is that, yes, we deserve statehood. And to be recognized because we are tax-paying citizens. We have and there's no good reason not to grant it for us. And believe me, if there was a chance that those 2 seats would be Republican, we would have been a state,
Oh yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that whole partisan approach to it is not going to fly.
Right. I just didn't know what was the predominant opinion, because my thought would be to do what the majority of people want, because I'm just sort of democratic.
We're
that
not
way.
a democracy.
Well, I just generally tend to think that the majority should rule. It was sort of like we were taught that when we were really little, and yet people can't seem to wrap their heads around it.
Because there's different types of people in different types of political factions, and this is why the two-party system is terrible. And needs to go by the wayside.
Terrible.
But one thing, there is a movement, however small it may be, but there is a movement in the GOP that actually advocates for minority rule. They actually believe that the majority of the citizenry, this is going back to the white male landowners of 200 years ago, that basically believe that only a certain portion of the population should be able to vote.
I actually agree, but just not with the same portion that they think should vote.
Oh, well, we could
I have portions of people. Well, I'm just saying, I could get behind that for some people, but it isn't based on their reasons, I assure you.
Yeah, so I guess wealthy landowners would not be the ones whose voices are the ones that we need to be listening to, because again, they make up the smallest minority out of any voting bloc in the country, and yet they are the most powerful. So we don't exactly live in a democratic republic, as people like to suggest we do.
Exactly. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say, one of the things too about statehood is the federal government and folks, while they tend to use us as like a political plaything, right? Because of our lack of statehood, you'll have Ted Cruz, offer an amendment to change the curriculum for DC public schools. It's like, I'm sorry, sir, senator from Texas, who's never even set foot in a DC public school, but they will, make these decisions that impact us because they still have jurisdiction over the district, which is why the Roe v. Wade decision is so critical for everyone, but certainly for us. And while I was down at the Supreme Court, as soon as the leak came out, like, no, this can't happen, because if Roe v. Wade, was overturned, and then if we get a Republican Congress, they could decide to ban, abortion and healthcare in the district, and we would have no say so, because we're not a state. We couldn't block it. We couldn't codify it, for ourselves. And so this is just, yet another example of why statehood is so critical for us to be able to protect ourselves from, this government overreach that we are, constantly subjected to in this area.
Well, you definitely shouldn't have to be paying taxes. Like, I think people, if you're living and you're being taxation without representation, like, that's unacceptable. So if they don't want to give you statehood, okay, but why are you all paying taxes then? Then what are you paying
approach
for?
to the argument. Yes.
You're going to turn Ward 8 into a bunch of libertarian leftists. That's what's going to happen.
No, I feel like coming there and helping facilitate a revolution.
Well, having you in elected office is going to make a significant difference, because you are presenting the economic populist voice that part of the city has probably never had. And now they will have it. And now knowledge is power, as we all know.
Neoliberals have not been their friends.
No. And so that is going to be the odyssey that is going to occur. Is this a 2-year term or a 4-year term?
It is 2-year term. Yes, it is. And I am excited to do just that, to educate, to advocate, and to empower. That's my goal.
You will be doing a wonderful job of that. Reverend, we can't thank you enough. Obviously, it will be a very Merry Christmas for you.
But
and your
now
family.
we're going to have to call you Reverend Commissioner.
Reverend Commissioner.
That's a lot. I'm just saying, that's a whole lot of title there.
That's all right.
One of the very few people that we can honestly say will bring the intersection of church and state together the right way.
The right way. That's right.
And I would also like to say, I think the people that live in DC should get paid dividends. You know, the people that in Alaska, how they get dividends from the state
oil
for the oil.
dividend.
You guys should get paid dividends for having to host like the slimiest of the slimiest people in your core.
Yeah.
Like there's not enough showers in a day to deal with the people that go there and work, and that they only go there and benefit themselves in their states, and they just basically come in and crap all over your state and say you're not a state. Yeah. If you see, they should pay you. Maybe if they paid you for that and you guys got dividends, maybe. I just, you know,
Jen, you're asking.
I'm telling you, I feel like going to Ward 8 and having a revolution.
Well, come on up and sister, let's get it going, because
I'll help you. I would help you. That's
crazy.
crazy.
If you ever end up in DC, now you actually have a place that you go visit and actually look forward to. So
yeah, no, it's true. I do I like DC. I like all places with good food.
Well,
and my thing is just reminding people that DC is, I mean, while we have a lot of slimy people, DC is more than just those slimy
it's a great city.
Oh, I'm just saying those people should pay rent to the people that are the townies, that are the people like you, like the people that are from DC, because those are not the people that are the slimy people. The people that are slimy people are the people
are not even from there.
Correct. They're the ivory tower people that are sitting there, and that's what you guys should get paid for that.
I agree, and I'd like for them to come over here. You know, like you got talking a lot of stuff about what we are and what we aren't, and that why don't you step on the other side of Pennsylvania. Let me holler at you for a minute.
Right. Reverend, thank you so much, and congratulations again. Have a wonderful holiday and New Year.
Go kick ass and take names.
Damn right.
Thank you all for having me. I always enjoy talking to you.
All right.
Thanks, Reverend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
One of our favorites.
She's
for
lovely.
Sure. And definitely.
And you know what? It is so much better for someone like that to be in a city commission position than wasting away.
Well, she's definitely going to have an impact for sure.
Wasted.
And I just think like the fact you'll have a representative there. Hang on with that for a minute, please.
Why?
Just please.
Okay.
And so I really do think that, the city has not had representation there for a very long time. And now it's going to have it, especially in an area that needs it more than any other. We need to harp on how bad things are and how the same people who've been sitting there have let them get that way. This is the same way, like when we had Marcel on and he was talking about Clyburn and how it's like the poorest county in the country. And yet obviously it's not working what you're doing. Like, let's try something else. So I just think it's interesting. Like you have these places with these dynastic kind of leadership situations and they're chronically in bad way. So it's very frustrating. So this is hopeful to me. I'm glad that there's somebody who's going to be a fighter at the grassroots level for the people in DC. I didn't want you to smoke with the Reverend here. That's why. She doesn't care. I don't know. Do you know what? Not. Don't ever do that to me again for that. Don't ever do that. Sorry. I am a good enough judge of character. I'm a grown woman. I can figure out what I can and cannot do. She is totally on the level. I assure you. I am sure she is. I assure you she's on the level. Metalopoly's all in there freaking out that there's a Democratic reverend and that she potentially is pro-choice. Which she sounded pretty pro-choice to me. And yes. And believe you me, Metalopoly, all sorts of things exist that you never thought possible. Yeah, don't think that you got to remember the overwhelming majority of people that are pro-life are evangelicals and Catholics. That doesn't mean that every Christian believes that a woman doesn't have a right to choose. Nope. It's nonsense. And you know that. And just like Catholics are the only ones who believe in the Virgin Mary. Well, how about that? But the other thing is that very many very religious people are very anti-integrating church and state. They believe that it actually sort of sullies their religion. Correct. And so that is, and by the way, when religious organizations want to get involved in policy and state, that's great. Pay taxes. Mm-hmm. Pay taxes. You want to play the game, pay to play. So I think that there is no contradiction whatsoever of having somebody who is a religious person, whether or not, we didn't really get into what her personal opinion is, but she is clearly in favor of religion not dictating policy. Mm-hmm. And if you support the idea of a majority rule, then we would have the right to choose. The majority of people in this country support a woman's right to choose, period. So the fact is we're being ruled by a very small group. We are being ruled by a minority. So maybe she just supports the idea of democracy and that the majority of people support this. And yeah, so that's why. We had the World Cup over the weekend. The final was won by Argentina. We have a very big Argentinian population here in South Florida. They were out in the streets of North Miami going absolutely berserk. Is that true? Yes, okay. Very true.
You know, when I
thousands.
was in Portugal won that year. It was
Mm.
2016, and it was like insane.
2016?
That was when I was in Portugal. They won.
Well, France is the champs.
I'm
champs,
telling
so they
you,
won
in
the World Cup. No, the
2016
World Cup's every 4 years, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all I know is whatever
I
it
think
was.
so.
Okay, maybe it wasn't a World Cup. Maybe it was just some other giant
Yeah,
thing.
maybe.
All I know is there was like crazy in the streets.
Anyway,
Craziness.
So our good friend Elon Musk, of course, was at the World Cup, and he was in the, I guess, the executive of executive booths with all of the Qatarian royal family. For those of you who may or may not know, if you did not actually see this, it's pretty pathetic, but Elon Musk had a very special guest with him in the booth. Or I should say the suite. This to me is just kind of the photograph to kind of, how do I turn this into?
Okay.
Make me a genius because I'm such a dummy.
I'm not.
Open link in the tab. I think that's it. Is that it?
I don't know. Maybe. Oh no! It just opened the article.
So let me see.
It opened the article.
Well, that's not what we wanted. Bear with us for 1 second.
Go up. Well, this
best.
is.
So open like a new window. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Well, actually, that doesn't help me. Oh, wait. Actually, maybe this will. Let's see what this does.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this is going to solve it. Let's try.
I don't know.
I'm a genius. With your help, of course.
Yeah.
So for those of you who may or may not know, Elon Musk was at the World Cup, and of course, he was with Jared Kushner. Who else would you possibly want to share a booth with than him? And so, as you guys will now see, this is absolutely ridiculous, but not entirely surprising. And why is that? Because, as I have been trying to point out to all of you guys, if you are willing to listen, not everybody is. Elon Musk is not your friend.
No.
He is not doing anything that is what you would consider to be, I mean, again.
We're really going on Elon Musk tonight, huh? All right, we're going in on him.
I'm going in on him because of this, because Jared, listen, I think Hunter Biden is very likely a criminal and has done some really nefarious things, perhaps on behalf of his father. But if you think for 1 second that he is any worse than somebody like Jared Kushner.
Oh, no. He's not even. Jared Kushner is so far out of that realm in terms of like nefarious behavior. Hunter Biden, oh my God.
Billions of dollars. That's what he's able to do, is negotiate billions of dollars with these individuals. I mean, you think you've got chauvinism problems here in the United States. Why don't you go over to Qatar and see what it's like there? And this is the people that they want to do business with.
I appreciate that, Metalopoly. Good. We're on the same team there.
Yeah.
We're on the same team.
And so what leads us into our wonderful...
Don't put it up until you... Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought you were clicking on that. Sorry.
So what leads us into our wonderful return this evening of bootlicker.
I had gotten a few requests. People were saying they missed our bootlicker. And so we used to do it every week. Okay. So what we have now is we have ourselves a new bootlicker. So we're going to start being a lot more cognizant and bringing back our bootlicker periodically.
And we are picking the perfect opportunity to do a bootlicker that I have been wanting to do for quite some time. And it couldn't have picked a better time to do this.
Mind you, I didn't even know who this person was until yesterday.
Oh, these are two of the biggest trolls you can imagine. One of the twin brothers. Those of you who know, our bootlicker of the week is Brian Krasenstein. I am sure you guys remember these.
It's Krasenstein.
He's
got ass in there.
Oh, Krasenstein. Okay, yeah, crass. He's pretty crass.
But that would be with a C, but he's got ass in his name.
Okay, well, he's acting like an ass. And why was he acting like an ass? Well, Mr. Musk decided to put out a Twitter poll the other day, deciding whether or not he should stay on or step down as CEO of Twitter. He's still the owner and still probably making all the decisions, but is he going to be the CEO? And the poll ended, and it was 57 step down, 43 stay. So Mr. Krasenstein.
That's how I'm saying it. He's crass.
Mr. Bootlickingstein decided to say, because keep in mind, Krasenstein's account was suspended, but for some reason, Elon Musk decided to bring it back. Whatever that reasoning was, I don't know.
But it probably involves some bootlicking.
So Krasenstein says, I vote no.
And is it Krasenstein or Krasenstein?
I don't know. You would know better than I.
No, but it could be either. I know Weinstein and Weinstein. I know both.
So Krasenstein, we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
You know?
Krasenstein.
Rothenstein, Daniel Rothenstein. I vote no because you show that you want to improve. Own your mistakes. Move forward. Improve.
With exclamation point.
Could
you attach your sycophantic mouth anymore to his ass? Like, I don't think so. But anyway, can we all just comment on the graphic, please? It was well put together by me, I must say. It's been a while.
Well,
look at that Musk picture.
I mean, talk about Italian boots. I mean, those are fantastic. I mean,
and who is the gentleman in the back?
The gentleman in the back is his twin brother. Is it Ed Krasenstein?
Yeah, Krasenstein.
Krasenstein. They're very crass. It almost makes too much sense. So why do we bring this up? Not just because it is the bootlicking of bootlicking, but why do we use them? Because they are bootlickers. They are bootlickers of corporate power. These are two of the biggest grifters, anti-Trumpers that were, let's just go to their Twitter profile and tell you exactly what they are and who they are and what they do, because this is very, very important stuff. And without question, the Krasenstein.
It isn't about whether or not he made a good point. A lot of people might have made that same point, but for different reasons. This is a sycophant.
So Mr. Krasenstein is fighting for the truth, pushing for unity. Follow my brother, Ed Krasenstein, decentralized social profile. And then, of course, he has 592,500 followers. What they don't tell you generally is that they follow 529,100 people. Now, why would you do something like that? Could it be that you're a troll account and that your goal is to try to be as relevant as possible for corporate establishment interests? Because that's what they do. And the brother Ed says, living in reality, fact-checking alternative facts. Follow my twin, Web3 futurist. And where do they live? They live in Florida, because of course they do. They live across the way in Fort Myers, about 2 hours and change from where we are. Shocking, but not shocking, because that's Florida. Because Florida. Billy Corbin likes to say.
Just because Florida. Because Florida.
These guys are the embodiment of why people hate politics. They don't stand for anything. Their interest is to figure out how can we possibly grift our way into some type of a comfortable living by doing this. Let's suck up to Elon Musk, who's as anti-worker as it gets, no different than Jeff Bezos or Bill. I almost called him Billy Gates. That's what he calls himself on the weekends when he's hanging out with his chums.
Yeah, that's what he does.
But Elon Musk is not for working people. He's as anti-worker as it gets. Just look at his practices running Tesla. And so here you have these guys who liberals think are like their darlings, that they're fighting the resistance against Trump. But in reality, they're just here to make a buck. That's what they're doing. Now, how well are they being paid? I don't know. I don't really care. All I do know is that they're back and they're going to do what they have done before. They're guys who set up an office where you had a whole bunch of cell phones where as soon as a tweet would go off, they would hit retweet. Again, it's a trolling farm. It's no different than, oh man, Sally Albright, if you guys remember that name. They're really no different. They're all just kind of cut from the same cloth. So that is our show for the evening.
Guys, if you're not subscribed, just subscribe right now. Yeah. It's free. It's easy. We put out really good content. It's a variety of stuff, all different topics.
Yeah.
So just subscribe. It's free. And share it. Share our information.
Patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you could become a special person as part of our organization. We would certainly appreciate it. Do we have any new patrons?
I get an email when we do. No, we do not.
Oh, and I guess we don't have a new one. I thought we were going to have it, but alas. hopefully, those of you guys who are out there, remember, for as little as $5 a month, you can become one. But if you are feeling extra generous, $10 a month will get you the Lulu sticker and the Mansion Parliamentarian bumper sticker, as you guys can see. This would be a great holiday gift for any of you that are interested. But if you are really feeling generous and want to be a $25 a month patron,
It helps.
you can get the Tri-Blend, the wonderful generational change jersey.
It's a jersey.
You all know you want one.
They're really cute, guys. They really are. They have
really-
this kind of retro vibe. They're really cute.
They really rock.
I
and
designed
sock.
them.
She did.
He was doubting it. He had doubts about my concept. He was just wanted to take our logo and stick it on the front of a shirt.
Is that what I wanted?
Yes, you wanted the logo just to be on the front of the shirt.
Oh, well.
And I said, no, let's have it be something that has like a meaning to it and then have the logo on the back.
Well,
It was all me. Me.
Nice. But we learned our lesson. Then, of course, if you are feeling a little gun shy about getting online and putting your credit card information on our site and keeping it there, be more like Double K, who is extra generous because, of course, it is Hanukkah week. And, of course, Christmas is right around the corner. But if you
Cash
do not
App
want
is
to do
better.
that, Cash App for a lot of people is perhaps the better way to go. So if you could go over to
It
Cash
helps.
App, $Gen Change. That is how you can
And
contribute.
and that money, like we don't make any real money here, people. Like I bear it, like, and I pay people that do work for us as money comes in. Like, we're pretty pitiful.
No, we're not pitiful. We're just
No,
not that
I mean,
big.
we're just small. We're very small, guys. So,
But we'll see what happens with Rumble. So we're going to be doing some work on there.
but
See if
all
it
of
comes
your
to
money
pass.
that comes in, we donate to local efforts, to community service, to on the ground, grassroots, everything from community gardens and food distributions, just different things with organizations that we know where the money gets exactly where it needs to go. And especially now that we're not in campaign season and we're not making any sort of political donations, all we're doing is educational stuff like this podcast. And the money that comes in helps us do that and helps us donate to local causes.
Absolutely. And so for those of you who are probably aware, we have our wonderful presentation coming up. I believe I can hit this.
Wait, which one are you trying to show?
Festivus for the rest of
No,
us.
that's not there. You don't have it. Where did you send it?
It's on that particular.
On which one? 10.3?
Well, the slides that are on 12.14, they would be there.
Okay.
No.
I know I have to remove it. You have to
Oh.
change it to this, but hold on. There. It was on that set.
6 p.m. Friday evening. The Festivus
Guys,
for the rest of us will be happening.
It's a Festivus for the rest of us.
So you're definitely going to want to tune in because we will be airing political grievances, possibly some feats of strength.
I'm airing all grievances.
Okay, and then Festivus miracles. We don't know what the hell those are, but you know,
I'm having some Festivus miracles.
just hoping
Actually,
for the
we should do.
best.
We're going to do a contest. Okay. I think the person that in the chat that comes up with the best Festivus miracle gets a Gen Change jersey.
We're going to have lots of wonderful guests, so you better tune in. Don't be square.
A lot
Be
of fun
there.
content creators are coming on, guys. And we're going to all be airing our grievances. It's going to be really funny.
It'll be awesome, tremendous, incredible, really great. You're going to love it. So with that said, we appreciate you guys. We love the support. It really means a lot for those of you celebrating Hanukkah. Enjoy. And of course, we will be doing our Festivus for the rest of us on Friday. We'll see you then.
I got to get the Festivus pulled out.
It'll be ready. Have a good night, guys.
I got to find it.